Wait, inside me? What does that even mean? The curious alien girl asked in confusion. Marcus Davidson stood in his apartment's kitchen, brewing his morning coffee, completely naked and fresh from the shower. His muscular frame, adorned with a light tan, moved with casual grace as he prepared for another day at the Interstellar Cultural Exchange Center. The morning sunlight played across his curly dark brown hair and neatly trimmed beard, highlighting droplets of water that still clung to his skin. He was just about to take his first sip when a startled shriek echoed from the bathroom. Marcus! Marcus, come quickly! The urgency in Aurora's voice had him sprinting toward the bathroom, coffee forgotten. He found his girlfriend, Aurora Starlight, staring at her reflection in the mirror with wide, alarmed blue eyes. Her pale silver skin seemed to shimmer under the bathroom lights, and her long, straight white silver hair cascaded down her back, contrasting beautifully with her sleek black bodysuit. "What's wrong?" Marcus asked, scanning for any obvious problems. Aurora turned to him, her delicate features twisted in confusion as she placed a hand on her slightly rounded belly. "Something's different. Look." Marcus examined her stomach, noting the subtle curve that hadn't been there before. A smile spread across his face as realization dawned. "Well, sweetheart, I think you might be pregnant." Aurora's large blue eyes widened even further. "Pregnant? What does that mean?" "It means there's a baby growing inside you." "Our baby?" Her jaw dropped. "Wait, inside me? What does that even mean?" Marcus couldn't help but chuckle at her bewilderment. "That's how human reproduction works. The baby develops inside the mother's body for about 9 months before being born." Aurora sank onto the edge of the bathtub, her expression a mixture of shock and fascination. But that's impossible. My people haven't reproduced naturally in centuries. We use artificial gestation chambers in specialized facilities. Natural birth is considered a lost biological function." Marcus knelt beside her, taking her trembling hands in his. "Well, apparently not as lost as everyone thought. How do you feel about this?" I don't know," she admitted, her voice small. "We should see a doctor, someone who understands celestial physiology." Marcus nodded. "I know just the person, Dr. Aldrich at the Exchange Center's medical wing. He specializes in interspecies medicine." An hour later, they sat in Dr. Aldrich's private examination room. The elderly male doctor, with his distinguished gray hair and kind brown eyes, studied the holographic readouts floating above Aurora's abdomen with intense concentration. "Fascinating," he murmured, adjusting his spectacles. "Simply fascinating." "Doctor?" Aurora's fingers tightened around Marcus's hand. "You are indeed pregnant, my dear," Dr. Aldrich confirmed, deactivating the holographic display. "About 6 weeks along, I'd estimate. The fetus appears to be developing normally, showing characteristics of both species." "But how is this possible?" Aurora asked. "Natural reproduction was bred out of my people generations ago." The doctor leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "Not bred out, precisely. More like suppressed. You appear to have a rare genetic variant that's reactivated the natural reproductive system. It's extraordinarily uncommon, but not unprecedented." Marcus felt Aurora tense beside him. "What does this mean for us?" Dr. Aldrich's expression grew serious. "This presents both an opportunity and a potential risk. Your condition could be of great interest to your people's scientists and geneticists. However," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "given the Celestial Empire's strict control over reproduction, they might view this development as problematic." "You mean they might try to take her?" Marcus's voice carried an edge of steel. "It's a possibility we can't ignore," the doctor admitted. "My recommendation would be to keep this pregnancy private, at least for now. I'll list it in the medical records as a standard interspecies union, requiring medical monitoring, nothing more." Aurora placed a protective hand over her belly. "Can we trust you, doctor?" "My dear, I've been treating interspecies couples for longer than you've been alive. Doctor-patient confidentiality isn't just a policy, it's a sacred oath. Your secret is safe with me." As they left the medical center, Marcus noticed Aurora's unusually quiet demeanor. "Hey," he said softly, pulling her close. "We'll figure this out together." She looked up at him, a small smile finally breaking through her worry. Promise? Promise. Besides, he grinned, think of it this way. We're making history. The first natural celestial birth in centuries? That's pretty damn cool. Aurora laughed, some of her usual sparkle returning. Trust a human to find the exciting side of a potentially dangerous situation? That's what we do best, sweetheart. That's what we do best. The following weeks brought a cascade of new experiences for both Marcus and Aurora. Their apartment, once a simple shared space, transformed into a sanctuary of discovery as they navigated the uncharted waters of Aurora's unique pregnancy. One morning, Marcus awoke to find Aurora's side of the bed empty. The sound of retching from the bathroom told him everything he needed to know. He found her kneeling on the floor, her silver skin slightly paler than usual. "This is most undignified word to say," she groaned, accepting the damp washcloth he offered. "Celestials don't get sick. Ever." Marcus helped her to her feet, supporting her trembling form. "Welcome to morning sickness, sweetheart. Though whoever named it, that was a damn liar. It can hit any time of day. How do human females endure this?" Aurora pressed the cool cloth to her forehead. "And why are you grinning?" "Because you're adorable when you're grumpy," he chuckled, earning himself a half-hearted swat. "And human women endure it because they know it's temporary. Usually clears up after the first trimester." Aurora's large blue eyes widened in horror. "There are multiple trimesters." "Trimesters," he corrected gently. "3 of them, each about 3 months long." "By the celestial core," she muttered, leaning against him. "What other delightful surprises await me?" As if on cue, her stomach growled loudly. Aurora looked down at her belly in betrayal. "And now I'm starving. How can I be nauseated and ravenous simultaneously?" "That's pregnancy for you? What sounds good?" Aurora's face lit up. "Those pickled earth vegetables you brought home last week, the ones that made you grimace when I ate them straight from the jar. Pickles for breakfast?" Marcus tried not to show his disgust. "Sure, why not? Want them with anything." That sweet frozen cream you keep hidden in the back of the freezer." Marcus blinked. "Ice cream and pickles? Together? Is that strange?" Aurora asked, already heading for the kitchen. "For humans? Yes. For pregnant women, surprisingly common." Later that day, at the Interstellar Cultural Exchange Center, they faced their first real test of secrecy. Aurora's form-fitting bodysuit, typically perfect for her work as a cultural liaison, now felt uncomfortably snug around her midsection. "Perhaps I should have worn something looser," she whispered to Marcus during their lunch break in his office. "Director Thane kept staring at me during the morning briefing." Marcus glanced up from his datapad, where he'd been researching human-alien hybrid pregnancies. "Did he say anything?" "No, but..." Aurora fidgeted with her sleeve. "I've never felt so exposed. It's ironic. My people consider natural reproduction primitive, yet I feel more connected to my body than ever before." Marcus set aside his datapad and moved to sit beside her on the office's small couch. "How so?" "Every sensation is heightened. Colors seem brighter. Scents are more intense." She took his hand, placing it on her slightly rounded belly. "And I'm constantly aware of this new life growing inside me. It's terrifying and exhilarating. That's the miracle of life, sweetheart. Raw, primal, and beautiful." Aurora's eyes darkened with desire. "Speaking of primal..." She leaned closer, her silver hair falling like a curtain around them. Marcus groaned. "Aurora, we're at work." "The door is locked," she purred, trailing her fingers along his jaw. "And these pregnancy hormones are making me rather adventurous." "You're insatiable," he laughed, catching her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. "But we should probably maintain some professional boundaries." Aurora pouted playfully. "Your human restraint is both admirable and frustrating." She settled for curling against his side instead. "Tell me more about what to expect. Dr. Aldrich's information packets are very clinical. Well, your cravings might get more interesting, and you'll probably experience mood swings." "I do not have mood swings." Aurora sat up straight, indignant. Then she paused, noting Marcus's raised eyebrow. "Oh, point taken. You might also start having vivid dreams," he continued, "and your energy levels will fluctuate." I've already noticed that. Yesterday, I reorganized our entire apartment in 2 hours. Then I napped for 4. I wondered why all my books were suddenly arranged by color instead of author. It's more aesthetically pleasing, Aurora defended, then grew serious. Marcus, what if someone at work discovers our secret? The Celestial Empire has informants everywhere. Then we'll deal with it, he said firmly. I won't let anyone harm you or our child. Such fierce protectiveness, she murmured, touching his face. It's very human of you. Is that a compliment or an observation? But, both. My people would consider it primitive, but I find it incredibly attractive. Her blue eyes sparkled with mischief. Perhaps we should continue this discussion at home? Before Marcus could respond, a knock at the door made them both jump. Aurora quickly smoothed her bodysuit and moved to a more professional distance. Come in, Marcus called, straightening his collar. Director Thane's assistant poked her head in. Mr. Davidson, the ambassador from Proxima Centauri has arrived early for the trade negotiations. They're requesting your presence in conference room A. I'll be right there. Once the assistant left, Marcus turned to Aurora. We'll continue this at the discussion later. Promise? Aurora's voice held both playfulness and need. Promise. He kissed her quickly before heading to the door. Try not to reorganize my office while I'm gone. No guarantees, she called after him. Your filing system offends my newfound nesting instincts. Marcus laughed all the way to the conference room, marveling at how his life had changed. 6 months ago, he'd been a simple cultural liaison. Now he was helping his pregnant alien girlfriend hide her miraculous condition while navigating interstellar diplomacy. And he wouldn't have it any other way. As Aurora entered her 4th month of pregnancy, concealing her condition became increasingly challenging. Her once sleek bodysuit now required constant adjustments, and her natural ethereal glow had intensified to an almost conspicuous radiance. One morning, while preparing for an important diplomatic reception, Aurora stood before their bedroom mirror, frustration evident in her luminous features. Nothing fits properly anymore, she sighed, running her hands over the subtle curve of her belly. Even my backup formal attire is becoming suspicious. Marcus paused in knotting his tie to admire her. The traditional celestial ceremonial robe she wore, typically flowing and elegant, now clung tellingly to her changing form. What about that adaptive fabric you mentioned, the one that responds to body temperature? That would only draw more attention, Aurora replied, attempting to adjust the fabric's drape. Celestials rarely experience temperature fluctuations. Using thermal reactive clothing would raise questions about why I'm having heat regulation issues. A knock at their apartment door made them both freeze. Aurora, it's Lyra from the Cultural Exchange Office. I brought those reports you requested. Just a moment, Aurora called, panic flashing in her eyes. She quickly grabbed Marcus's formal diplomatic jacket, throwing it on over her ceremonial robe. The oversized garment effectively concealed her figure. Marcus raised an eyebrow. That's becoming your go-to solution, isn't it? Hush, Aurora whispered, smoothing her hair. Your human clothing is remarkably useful for hiding things. She opened the door, greeting her colleague with practiced composure. Lyra, a young celestial with characteristic silver skin and striking violet eyes, entered with a stack of data pads. Her gaze lingered on Aurora's unusual attire. Are you feeling well? You're wearing human clothing. Oh, this. Aurora laughed, the sound only slightly strained. I'm studying human diplomatic fashion for next week's Earth Celestial Summit. Marcus has been kind enough to let me experiment with his wardrobe. How dedicated of you, Lyra remarked, clearly puzzled by such commitment to cultural research. Though I must say, you've been rather intense about your human studies lately. Well, you know what they say, full immersion is the best teacher, Aurora replied smoothly, accepting the data pads. Was there anything else? Actually, yes. Director Thane mentioned you've declined several morning briefings recently. He's concerned. Temporal adjustment research, Marcus interjected, stepping forward. Aurora's helping me study how celestial circadian rhythms adapt to Earth's day-night cycle. It's fascinating stuff. We're finding that morning cortisol levels in celestials tend to... That's quite all right, Lyra interrupted, backing toward the door. I'm sure it's all very scientific. I'll let Director Thane know you're engaged in important research. After Lyra left, Aurora collapsed onto their couch, shrugging off Marcus's jacket. That was too close, and now I've missed enough morning briefings to attract attention. We need a better strategy, Marcus agreed, sitting beside her. Maybe it's time to request that remote work assignment we discussed. The one studying human-alien cultural integration in isolated communities? Aurora considered this. It would get us away from daily scrutiny, but such an abrupt departure might seem suspicious. Not if we plan it right. The annual budget review is coming up. Perfect time to propose new research initiatives. Their conversation was interrupted by Aurora's sudden intake of breath. Her hand flew to her belly, eyes widening in wonder. "What is it? Are you all right?" Marcus asked, immediately concerned. "I felt something like a flutter." Aurora grabbed his hand, placing it where she'd felt the sensation. "There! Did you feel that?" Marcus shook his head, smiling at her enthusiasm. "It's probably too early for me to feel it externally, but that's likely our little one making their presence known. First movements usually feel like butterflies or bubbles to the mother." "Mother," Aurora repeated softly. "That word still feels strange on my tongue. Celestials don't use such terms. We have designation codes for progenitors and offspring. But mother, it feels more personal," Marcus suggested. "Intimate," she corrected, her blue eyes darkening with emotion. "Like so many human concepts. You make everything so visceral, so immediate. It's intoxicating." Their moment was interrupted by Aurora's communicator chiming. She checked the message and groaned. "Emergency staff meeting in 20 minutes. Apparently, the Proximin delegation is demanding changes to the trade agreement." "Better get changed then," Marcus said, retrieving his jacket. "Want to meet for lunch after? I found a new Earth Fusion restaurant that might satisfy your latest cravings." "The ones for what you call sushi covered in chocolate sauce?" Aurora's eyes lit up. "Yes, please. Though I still don't understand why the restaurant staff looked so horrified when I requested that combination. Trust me, sweetheart, that's not even the strangest pregnancy craving I've heard of." He helped her up, watching as she disappeared into their bedroom to change. Minutes later, she emerged in a cleverly draped formal robe that managed to obscure her growing bump while still looking appropriately professional. "How do I look?" "Beautiful," Marcus replied honestly. "Though you might want to tone down that pregnancy glow. You're practically radiant." Aurora concentrated, and her silver skin's luminescence dimmed slightly. "Better? Perfect. Now go dazzle them with your diplomatic skills, not your natural bioluminescence." At the Interstellar Cultural Exchange Center, Aurora navigated the corridors with practiced grace, nodding to colleagues while maintaining careful control over her posture and movements. She'd developed numerous strategies for concealment, carrying data pads at strategic heights, choosing seats that kept her partially hidden behind desks or tables, and mastering the art of deflecting personal questions with cultural research inquiries. Yet as she settled into her seat for the emergency meeting, Aurora couldn't help but wonder how much longer they could maintain this elaborate dance of deception. Their child grew stronger each day, making its presence known in ways both wonderful and increasingly difficult to hide. But as she caught Marcus's supportive glance from across the conference room, Aurora felt a surge of determination. They would find a way. After all, wasn't that what humans did best? Adapt, overcome, and turn impossible situations into triumph? Perhaps she was becoming more human than she realized. The thought made her smile. The message arrived during their evening meal, its sudden chime shattering the peaceful atmosphere of their apartment. Aurora's fork clattered against her plate as she read the holographic text floating above her communicator. "No," she whispered, her silver skin paling to an almost translucent shade. "No, no, no." Marcus set down his own utensils, concern etching his features. "What's wrong?" "My family's coming, tomorrow." Aurora's voice trembled. "Father, mother, and my younger sister. They're already en route from the celestial homeworld. Something about a routine familial assessment and ensuring I'm maintaining appropriate cultural standards during my extended Earth assignment." Marcus ran a hand through his dark curls, mind racing. "Okay, don't panic. How long do they typically stay for these assessments?" 3 Earth days." Aurora pushed away her plate of half-eaten chocolate-covered pickles. "Marcus, I'm nearly 5 months along. My sister Stella is a genetic specialist. She'll notice something's different about me immediately." "Then we'll have to be creative." Marcus stood, pulling Aurora into his arms. Her belly, now distinctly rounded, pressed against him as she buried her face in his chest. Tell me about them. What should I expect? Aurora's laugh held a hint of hysteria. Expect the epitome of celestial propriety. Father is a high administrator in the Reproductive Regulation Bureau. Mother manages the largest artificial gestation facility in the capital. And Stella, she's brilliant, observant, and absolutely devoted to maintaining our species' genetic purity. So, basically, we're hosting the three people most likely to notice and be horrified by your condition. This isn't funny, Marcus. I know, sweetheart. He stroked her silvery hair, feeling her tremble against him. But sometimes you have to laugh to keep from screaming. Now let's think this through. What exactly happens during these assessments? Aurora pulled back, her blue eyes troubled. They'll want to inspect my living space, review my work records, and conduct a basic health scan. It's standard procedure for any celestial living long-term among other species. The health scan could be a problem. Could be. It will be catastrophic. The scanner will detect the pregnancy immediately. Marcus's expression turned thoughtful. Unless, what if we could get Dr. Aldrich to help? He might be able to provide a way to mask the readings, or even better, create a plausible medical excuse to delay the scan. Aurora's eyes widened. That might actually work, but we'll need more than that. They'll expect to share meals with us, observe my daily routine. She glanced down at her protruding belly. And I can't exactly hide this under your jacket for 3 days. No, but we can work with it. Marcus began pacing, his diplomatic training kicking in. We'll say you're participating in a cultural immersion study, examining how humans experience physical changes. That's why you're wearing looser clothing, following Earth eating patterns. That's brilliant, Aurora exclaimed, then frowned. But why would I choose such a primitive study? Because humans fascinate you? Marcus suggested with a roguish grin. We are pretty amazing after all. Aurora's expression softened. Yes, you are. She reached for him, pulling him close for a passionate kiss. Especially you. Their moment was interrupted by another chime. Dr. Aldrich responding to their urgent message. The holographic display showed his concerned face. I may have a solution, the doctor said without preamble. I can provide medical documentation stating Aurora is participating in a classified xenobiological study. The details would be restricted even from family members due to potential diplomatic implications. Will that work? Marcus asked. It should. I've already prepared the necessary paperwork, citing regulations that even the high administrator can't easily circumvent. The study's supposed classified nature will explain any unusual readings or behaviors. Aurora sagged with relief. Dr. Aldrich, you're a miracle worker. Save the praise until after we pull this off, the doctor cautioned, and come see me first thing tomorrow. We'll need to prepare you both for potential questions. After ending the call, they spent hours planning. Marcus helped Aurora rearrange their apartment, hiding any obvious signs of her pregnancy while strategically placing research materials about human biology and cultural studies. Late that night, as they lay in bed, Aurora traced patterns on Marcus's chest. What if this doesn't work? Then we'll deal with it, he replied firmly. Together. My father could have you dismissed from your position. My mother would probably try to have me institutionalized for genetic counseling. And Stella, ... Aurora shuddered. She'd want to study me like a fascinating specimen. Marcus pulled her closer, his hand resting protectively over their child. Not going to happen. Your family may be powerful, but they are not the only ones with influence. The Earth Diplomatic Corps has a vested interest in protecting its representatives and their families. Aurora's breath caught. You'd claim diplomatic protection for us? In a heartbeat, but let's hope it doesn't come to that. He kissed her forehead. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be interesting. Interesting? Aurora snorted. That's one way to put it. We're about to try fooling 3 of the most analytically minded Celestials into believing their daughter's pregnancy is actually a cultural research project. Hey, humans specialize in beating impossible odds. It's kind of our thing. Along with your remarkable ability to reproduce naturally, Aurora teased, her mood lightening. Among other talents, Marcus replied with a suggestive wink, Aurora's silver skin flushed with a pearlescent sheen. Care to demonstrate some of those talents before sleep? I thought you'd never ask. As they drifted off later, wrapped in each other's arms, Aurora marveled at how her life had changed. A year ago, she'd have been horrified at the thought of natural reproduction. Now she was preparing to deceive her entire family to protect the miracle growing inside her. And somehow, with this impossible human by her side, she felt ready to face whatever tomorrow might bring. The arrival of Aurora's family brought an immediate transformation to their apartment's atmosphere. High Administrator Primus entered first, his tall, austere form radiating authority. His silver skin held the metallic sheen of age, and his white hair was cropped in the traditional style of celestial bureaucrats. Behind him came Matron Supervisor Elena, her movements precise and measured, her pale blue eyes scanning every detail of their living space. Last entered Stella, and Aurora felt her heart skip. Her younger sister's analytical gaze held none of their parents' rigid formality. Instead, genuine curiosity sparkled in those familiar blue eyes as she took in the eclectic mix of human and celestial decor. "Fascinating arrangement," Stella murmured, running a finger along a shelf containing Earth books. "You've fully embraced the human practice of physical information storage." "It's part of my cultural immersion studies," Aurora explained, unconsciously adjusting her loose-fitting research tunic. "Humans maintain strong emotional connections to physical objects." "Speaking of emotional connections," Elena interjected, her tone carefully neutral, "your living arrangements with Mr. Davidson are unconventional." Marcus stepped forward, every inch the polished diplomat despite the early hour. "The arrangement was approved by both our governments. Living with a human provides invaluable insights for Aurora's research." "Yes, your research." Primus's voice carried a hint of disapproval. "Dr. Aldrich's report was surprisingly vague about the specifics." "Classified protocols," Aurora replied smoothly, just as they'd rehearsed. "The study examines human physiological responses to various cultural stimuli. The results could significantly impact future diplomatic relations." "And these stimuli require you to adopt human dietary habits?" Elena asked, eyeing the kitchen where evidence of Aurora's pregnancy cravings had been carefully staged to look like research materials. "Absolutely," Marcus jumped in. "You can't fully understand a species without experiencing their biological imperatives." Aurora's dedication to the project has been remarkable. Stella wandered closer to her sister, head tilted in that familiar way that always preceded an uncomfortable observation. "Your bioluminescence has increased by approximately 23.7% since my last visit." Aurora forced a laugh. "Side effect of the human circadian rhythm study. Their day-night cycle is quite different from ours." Stella's expression remained thoughtful. "And the changes to your body mass distribution?" "Part of understanding human physical adaptation patterns," Aurora explained, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Their bodies constantly change in response to environmental factors." "Primitive," Elena muttered. "Efficient," Stella corrected, surprising everyone. "Humans have survived and thrived precisely because of their adaptability." "It's quite remarkable, really." Primus frowned at his younger daughter. "Your fascination with human biology borders on inappropriate, Stella." "Knowledge is never inappropriate, Father." Stella's eyes never left Aurora. "For instance, did you know humans can repair damaged DNA through natural cellular processes without any technological intervention?" "Barbaric," Elena declared, but Aurora caught something else in her sister's tone. Not disgust, but wonder. The morning progressed with careful navigation of questions and demonstrations of Aurora's supposed research. Marcus proved invaluable, smoothly redirecting potentially dangerous lines of inquiry with diplomatic skill. During a brief moment alone in the kitchen, while Marcus gave her parents a tour of his cultural artifact collection, Stella cornered Aurora. "Your research project is very convincing," she whispered, helping Aurora prepare traditional celestial tea. "The documentation, the staged evidence, even the physical changes, all perfectly explained." Aurora's hands trembled slightly as she measured the luminescent tea leaves. "I'm glad you approve." "Oh, I don't approve at all." Stella's words made Aurora freeze, but her sister's next statement stunned her even more. "I think it's brilliant." "What?" "This." Stella gestured to Aurora's concealed belly. "The return of natural reproduction in our species. Do you have any idea what this means?" Aurora's mind raced. "Stella, I don't." "Please," her sister interrupted softly. "I'm a genetic specialist, remember? The subtle changes in your hormone levels, the altered cellular activity. I recognized the signs immediately. I just never imagined it would be my own sister making evolutionary history. Are you going to tell them? Aurora asked, her hand protectively covering her stomach. Stella's expression softened. Number. But you should know you're not alone. There have been other cases, carefully hidden from the Bureau. I've been tracking them for years. What? How? Did you really think natural reproduction would simply vanish from our entire species? Evolution doesn't work that way. The capacity remained dormant, waiting for the right conditions. Stella smiled. Or perhaps the right catalyst, like falling in love with a human. Aurora stared at her sister, hope warring with caution. Why are you telling me this? Because you'll need allies. The Bureau suspects something is happening among Celestials living in human territories. That's the real reason for this visit. They're investigating potential genetic degradation. They're hunting for others like me, Aurora realized with horror. Yes, but they won't find you. Stella's expression turned determined. I've already altered the preliminary scan results. As far as they're concerned, your biological changes are perfectly consistent with your cover story. Why would you risk helping me? Because you're my sister, because this child represents hope for our species' future, and because... Stella glanced toward the living room, where Marcus's voice could be heard explaining Earth art to their parents. Humans have shown us that natural isn't synonymous with primitive. Sometimes it's precisely what we need. The sound of approaching footsteps forced them to separate, but Aurora's mind whirled with new possibilities. They weren't alone. There were others, and more importantly, they had an ally in the most unexpected place. As she watched Stella smoothly deflect their mother's questions about the tea's unusual aroma, another pregnancy-related change they'd had to disguise, Aurora felt a new emotion joining her fear and determination: hope. The second day of the family visit brought an unexpected transmission that shattered their carefully maintained facade. High Administrator Primus received an urgent message during breakfast, one that made his already stern features turn glacial. The Bureau has detected anomalous biological readings in this sector, he announced, his silver eyes fixing on Aurora. Specifically, readings that suggest unauthorized reproductive activity. Aurora nearly dropped her spoon into her bowl of chocolate-covered breakfast cereal. Beside her, Marcus tensed imperceptibly, his diplomatic training the only thing keeping his expression neutral. That's concerning, Aurora managed, forcing her voice to remain steady. Has the Bureau identified the source? Not yet. Elena's pale blue eyes narrowed as she watched her daughter carefully set down her spoon. But they've dispatched a specialized investigation team. They should arrive within hours. Hours? Aurora's voice cracked slightly. She felt Marcus's hand find hers under the table, offering silent support. Stella, who had been quietly observing, suddenly spoke up. Father, surely the Bureau has more pressing matters than chasing phantom readings. The equipment here is calibrated for human biology. It's notoriously unreliable when scanning for celestial signatures. These readings came from our own monitoring systems, Primus countered, and they align with other concerning patterns we've observed in human territories. What patterns? Marcus asked, his tone carefully professional. Increased cellular activity, hormonal fluctuations, biological changes consistent with... Primus paused, his expression darkening. Primitive reproductive methods. Aurora felt the baby move within her, as if responding to the tension in the room. She shifted uncomfortably, drawing her mother's attention. You seem unsettled, daughter, Elena observed, and you've barely touched your unusual breakfast. It's part of my research, Aurora began, but Elena cut her off. Yes, your research, which oddly enough requires you to experience physical changes remarkably similar to those the Bureau is investigating. The room fell silent. Marcus's grip on Aurora's hand tightened. Mother, I can explain. Can you? Primus's voice carried the weight of his authority. Can you explain why your supposed cultural study lacks proper documentation? Why Dr. Aldrich's reports are suspiciously vague? Why your sister felt the need to alter your medical scans? Stella's sharp intake of breath confirmed what Aurora had feared. Their father had known about the altered results. The Bureau has been monitoring all communications from this sector, Primus continued. We knew something was happening here. We just never imagined... He looked at Aurora with a mixture of horror and disappointment. Our own daughter engaging in natural reproduction. Like some primitive species, Elena added, her voice trembling with emotion. Primitive? Marcus stood suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. Is that what you call the ability to create life? To nurture it within your own body? To form a connection so deep it transcends genetics? Mr. Davidson, Primus warned, this is a family matter. I am family, Marcus declared, his voice carrying the same authority he used in diplomatic negotiations. That child Aurora carries is as much mine as hers, and I won't stand here and listen to you dismiss this miracle as primitive. Miracle? Elena scoffed. It's an aberration, a throwback to our uncivilized past. No, Mother. Aurora stood as well, drawing strength from Marcus's presence. It's evolution, progress. Our species hasn't lost the ability to reproduce naturally. We've been suppressing it, denying our own nature in the name of supposed advancement. And what would you know of our nature? Primus demanded. More than you think. Stella's quiet voice cut through the tension. Father, the Bureau's investigation isn't just about Aurora. There are others, dozens of cases carefully hidden of Celestials rediscovering natural reproduction, particularly among those living in human territories. Impossible, Elena whispered. Is it? Stella challenged. Humans have shown us that technological advancement doesn't require abandoning our biological heritage. They've embraced both, growing stronger for it. While she gestured to their parents. We've been so focused on perfection that we've forgotten what it means to truly live. The baby chose that moment to kick. Hard. Aurora gasped, her hand flying to her belly. Without thinking, she grabbed Marcus's hand and pressed it to the spot. His eyes widened as he felt their child's movement. Strong little fighter, he murmured proudly. Elena stared at their joined hands, at the obvious intimacy of the moment. You actually want this? To carry a child like the remarkable being I am? Aurora finished. Yes, Mother. I want this. I want to experience every moment of creating this new life, and I'm not ashamed. The investigation team will be here soon, Primus stated flatly. They'll want to examine you, study this condition. No, Marcus's voice was steel. Aurora is under Earth diplomatic protection. Any attempt to forcibly examine her or our child will be considered a hostile act against a protected citizen. You would risk interstellar incident over this? Primus demanded. To protect my family? Without hesitation. The conviction in Marcus's voice seemed to strike something in Elena. She looked at her daughter, really looked at her, for the first time since arriving. You're glowing, she said softly. Not just your bioluminescence. You look happy, Stella supplied. She looks happy, Mother, and healthy, and very much in love. The sound of approaching vehicles outside broke the moment. Aurora's heart raced as she recognized the distinctive hum of Bureau transport ships. Father, she pleaded, please! Don't let them turn our child into a laboratory specimen. Primus stood rigid, conflict evident in his features as he looked between his daughter and the approaching investigation team. The choice he made would change everything. As the Bureau's investigation team approached their door, High Administrator Primus made a decision that would reshape celestial society forever. He straightened his shoulders, years of bureaucratic authority evident in his bearing, and strode to the apartment's communication panel. This is High Administrator Primus, he announced, his voice carrying the full weight of his authority. Authorization Code Alpha Prime 73. I am declaring this investigation null and void under Section 12 of the Ancient Preservation Act. Aurora gasped. The Ancient Preservation Act was one of the oldest and most powerful pieces of celestial legislation designed to protect historically significant biological and cultural phenomena. The approaching footsteps in the hallway halted. Furthermore, Primus continued, I am classifying all naturally occurring reproductive capabilities as protected biological heritage, effective immediately. Elena stared at her husband. Primus, what are you doing? What I should have done years ago, he replied, his stern features softening as he looked at Aurora. Protecting our future by embracing our past. 4 months later, Aurora's triumphant cry echoed through the specially designed birthing suite at the Interstellar Medical Center. Marcus held her hand, his dark eyes filled with wonder as Dr. Aldrich carefully lifted their newborn son. The baby's skin shimmered with a subtle silvery glow, while dark curls, and already showing signs of their father's unruly texture, crowned his tiny head. As he opened his eyes, they revealed an extraordinary blend of human brown and celestial blue, creating an iridescent pattern never before seen in either species. "He's perfect," Marcus whispered, pressing his forehead against Aurora's. "Of course he is," came Stella's voice from nearby, where she was monitoring the medical readings with professional interest and sisterly pride. "He's the first of a new generation." Elena, who had been hovering anxiously at the edge of the room, stepped closer. Over the past months, she had undergone her own transformation, her initial horror at natural reproduction, gradually giving way to fascination, and finally joy. "He has your luminescence," she told Aurora softly, reaching out to touch her grandson's glowing cheek. "But his father's strength." "Have you decided on a name?" Primus asked from where he stood near the door, attempting to maintain his bureaucratic composure despite the obvious emotion in his eyes. Aurora and Marcus exchanged a look before she answered. "Lirius," she said. "It means bridge between stars in ancient celestial." "Appropriate," Dr. Aldrich commented, checking the baby's vital signs. "He's already bridging more than just stars." The doctor's words proved prophetic. In the months following Lirius's birth, the number of naturally pregnant celestials living in human territories grew exponentially. What had once been hidden was now celebrated as more couples discovered their latent reproductive abilities. Primus's invocation of the Ancient Preservation Act had unexpected consequences. Rather than suppressing the phenomenon, it sparked a cultural revolution. The Bureau of Reproductive Regulation transformed into the Department of Reproductive Heritage, with Stella leading a new division dedicated to studying and supporting natural reproduction among their people. 1 year later, Aurora stood at the podium of the Interstellar Cultural Exchange Center, her son balanced on her hip as she addressed a mixed audience of humans and celestials. "A year ago, I asked in confusion, 'Wait, inside me? What does that even mean?'" The audience chuckled at her reference to what had become a famous phrase in both cultures. "Today, I stand before you as living proof that progress doesn't always mean abandoning our natural abilities. Sometimes it means rediscovering them." Marcus watched from the side, still admiring how his wife's silver skin glowed when she was passionate about something. Lirius reached for him and he stepped forward to take their son, who immediately grabbed his father's beard with familiar fascination. The human capacity for adaptation, for embracing both tradition and innovation, showed us a better way, Aurora continued. They reminded us that technology should enhance our natural abilities, not replace them. And in doing so, they helped us rediscover a part of ourselves we thought lost forever. Elena, sitting in the front row, wiped away a tear as she watched her grandson play with Marcus's curls. Beside her, Primus maintained his dignity, though his eyes shone with pride. "Our son," Aurora gestured to Lirius, who was now attempting to climb his father like a tree, "represents more than just a biological breakthrough. He represents hope. Hope that different species can not only coexist, but create something beautiful together. Hope that progress doesn't mean forgetting who we are, and hope that sometimes the most primitive path is actually the most enlightened one." As applause filled the hall, Marcus stepped closer to his wife. Their son settled between them. Lirius's skin glowed with happiness, a trait he'd inherited from his mother, while his mischievous grin was all his father. "Ready to go home?" Marcus whispered in Aurora's ear. "Always," she replied, reaching up to kiss him as their son giggled between them. Later that night, as they watched Lirius sleep in his crib, his skin casting a gentle glow across the nursery, Aurora turned to Marcus with a familiar gleam in her eye. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "Stella's research suggests that subsequent pregnancies are even more likely in celestials who've already experienced natural reproduction." Marcus pulled her close, his dark eyes meeting her bright blue ones. "Is that your scientific way of saying you want another baby?" "Maybe," she teased. "Are you up for another round of shocking my species?" "Sweetheart," he grinned, "nothing would make me happier." As they left the nursery, hand in hand, Aurora reflected on how far they'd come from that morning in the bathroom when she'd first discovered her pregnancy. What had started as confusion and fear had transformed into a revolution of love, acceptance, and hope. And this was just the beginning.